So Utah's governor is calling this a political assassination, though we don't yet know for sure whether it was politically motivated. But if it was, what might be driving that? Stephen Webster is an associate professor of political science at Indiana University and author of American Rage, How Anger Shapes Our Politics. And you just happened to be in Vancouver for a political science conference.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. What did you think when you heard the news of the shooting at first and then the confirmed death of Charlie Kirk?
I think my first reaction is that it's just incredibly sad. I think there's a lot to consider about this. When we think about political violence in the United States, the encouraging thing is that polls show that most Americans don't support political violence, but the sad reality is we're seeing it with increasing regularity. We can think about attempts on the life of the president. We can think about attacks directed at state lawmakers in Minnesota. And we've seen both Republicans and Democrats in Congress be on the receiving end of gun violence. And so it doesn't take a lot for something like this to happen. And I think it's a sad reflection of the state of our politics right now.
It's really interesting to have your perspective on this as an American, as an academic, as somebody who's thought a lot about this. As outsiders, we look down at the United States, we see the number of guns, we see how angry and polarized politics is. So maybe it doesn't surprise us so much. It sounds like this level of violence, particularly recently, surprises you.
I think the fact that it's happening with sort of increasing regularity is what's really alarming a lot of Americans. And this is one area where we see both Democrats and Republicans on the receiving end of this. And so one would hope that we would see a bipartisan denunciation of this violence. And I think the early signs are that we are seeing just that. And so hopefully the rhetoric from our political officials can tamp down any further escalation. But certainly as an American, it is very, very troubling to see this.
So some acts of violence end up getting mired in partisan reactions. School shootings, for example. Is it thoughts and prayers that should be called for? Is it gun control, right? So you can tell which side of the house people will shout those things out. When it comes to political targets, it feels like, and particularly in the last few hours, it feels like almost everybody is of one mind here, that this is a line that should never have been crossed and shouldn't be crossed in the future. Are you heartened at all by seeing what strikes me as being less of a partisan response, more of a kind of humanity in terms of response?
I think that is encouraging. So we know that how our public officials react to anything does a lot to shape how the public views events. And so the more we can have both Democrats and Republicans say that this is not acceptable and it's far outside the bounds of anything we would expect to see in our politics, I think the better off that we are, for sure.
We don't know who the shooter is. We don't know exactly what their motivation is, but it's not hard to imagine that it would be driven by Kirk's immense popularity, supporter of MAGA, very strong debater, that this may have made somebody on the other side of the political spectrum angry. And yet, ironically, like him or not, he actually encouraged debate on campus at a time when I don't think there is a lot of debate on campus.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad that, whatever you think of Charlie Kirk's politics, the fact that he would meet with people and discuss politics, I think is an admirable trait, as you suggested. And it's extraordinarily sad that people can let their passions go to such an unacceptable level. And I think it's important to note that a lot of the anger that we see in American politics doesn't lead to this. A lot of times anger leads to voting for one's candidates or protesting or donating to a campaign. But sadly, there are times where people can get far too carried away and we can see something tragic like this happen.
Let me finish with this. And again, I'm really interested in your expert perspective on this. Looking at this from north of the border, one of the things I see is that virtually every institution is in question now. The count of the vote is in question. The Center for Disease Control is in question. Judges are being questioned. And if you don't trust anything, then it's really easy to get whipped up in a frenzy. First of all, does that sound like something that's going on in the United States? And if it is, How do you address it?
I think it's a very fair assessment of where we are in the United States. I think if you're a Democrat, you can sort of get your news and your ideas about the world from one place, and the same is true if you're a Republican. And so I think what that illustrates is a lack of common bonds between Democrats and Republicans. And I think that is a really important shift from previous eras of American politics. And I think it makes it easier for these tragic events to occur when Democrats and Republicans just fundamentally disagree on so many things.
Maybe we can end with this. I'm just curious, from a personal perspective, as you think about what's happened in your country, what you're thinking tonight.
I'm hoping for calm. I'm hoping that we decide once and for all that this is enough, and that we respect people whose opinions might differ from our own, and that we can agree that we should not see this one more time. And that's what I think many of my fellow Americans are thinking.
I'm sorry for the circumstances, but I'm happy that we had a chance to connect with you while you're in Vancouver. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Stephen Webster, an associate professor of political science at Indiana University and the author of American Rage: How Anger Shapes Our Politics.